Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and welcome. Well, here's a man who has when you hear him speak, he's a man that's come from Manchester, but he's currently residing in the beautiful state of Miami, Florida, in the US. And I must say, his dedication to his cause, given that he's actually speaking in his time on a Sunday evening, where he could have been doing other things, he's chosen to be on this podcast, which is staggering. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Carlos Garrido. Welcome.
Darren, what a treat it is to be with you and your listeners. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
Well, I'm looking forward to this, Carlos. It's and I said in I think an email or a LinkedIn message, are you still okay to do this on a Sunday? Because not many people work on a Sunday, but you were telling me that you do a lot of work and you're always working. So we'll get into your story at the moment in a short time, but. For the listeners' benefit, you're the CEO and founder at Sandler Training in Miami. You're also the executive chair at Vista, Florida, so executive leadership coaching. But you've also got quite an interesting background that didn't necessarily start off in the work that you do today. Can you just tell us a little bit about your origins and what sort of prompted you or led you to do what you do today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Darren. Yeah, and most people are surprised to hear this voice come out of a name like Carlos Garrido. In fact, can you imagine in Miami how surprised they are to hear this? I mean, in Miami, which is like a Latin community, and I don't speak a word of Spanish, which is a benefit, by the way, because my wife's Colombian and her mother doesn't speak any English. So it's like, it's a perfect situation. I don't know what she's saying. She doesn't know what I'm saying. But I can tell by the look on her face that I don't want to know what she's saying about me. So I'm quite blissful ignorance. I'm in blissful ignorance by not being able to speak Spanish. So I was working in I've had a long career in like accounting and corporate finance and investment banking, and I did that for a long time in the UK. My last sort of turn, I was there for a long time. I worked for a big pharmaceutical company, doing their sort of mergers and acquisitions and M&A work and going out and finding like businesses to buy or divisions to sell. That was kind of where that was where that investment banking career took me. And this was around sort of 2008, and I'd done a couple of big deals for them. So I'd had a lot of, it's a very big pharmaceutical company, global. And I'd had a lot of exposure at the C-suite, because when you do a big deal, you're talking to the CEO and the board, and so I had a lot of exposure. And this was 2008, and I don't know how many of your listeners are as old as you and I, Darren, but they might remember that in 2008, the world was going bonkers for something called BRIC, the BRIC strategy. Do you remember that? Brazil, Russia, India, China. It was basically the emerging market strategy. Yeah. The world had kind of woken up to this, what I think was on reflection, a fantasy, but they didn't know it at the time, that there was this emerging middle class in places like South America and Asia and places like this emerging wealth pool that all big corporates had to sort of figure out how to tap into. And my company, like most companies, had to put together a way to access those markets. And so they put together like a little crack squad of some people to go into Latin America, Asia, places like that. And the CEO called me up and said, "Hey, listen, we need somebody to lead those advances into Latin America." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And he said, "And you speak Spanish." And I was about to say, "Well, I don't speak Spanish, buddy." I was just about to say it. And he was American. Like, Americans think that if you call Carlos Garrido, of course you speak Spanish. You must be Mexican. So he said, "You speak Spanish." And I was just about to say I don't speak Spanish. And he said, "Of course, the problem is you're going to have to bring your family out to Miami." And I thought, ooh, beats Manchester, right? If any of your listeners have ever been to Manchester, and I grew up in the 80s, like watching Miami Vice and stuff like that, Scarface and stuff. So I'm thinking, oh, I fancy Miami. So I never told anyone I spoke Spanish, but I never corrected anybody that I didn't speak Spanish. And I thought, well, I can learn Spanish. Ended up coming out to Miami, fell in love with Miami, actually fell in love with America. It's a
Okay.
cool place, America. Has a very bad rap internationally. It's a bloody good place, America. And American people, really, really nice people. So
Mm.
I kind of fell in love with being over here. And around that time, my brother, who led a sales team he actually yet led a European sales team for an American company in Manchester, in England, and around that time, he'd become a bit of an empty nester. His kids had all left for college, and he would come out and visit me in Miami, and it's bloody nice, Miami, right? It's a nice place to be.
It
And
is.
and we one night we got drunk and came up with this idea that we were going to start a business together. And he was a client of Sandler. I'm
Ah,
going back, whatever, long time, but he was a long-standing client of Sandler. So we cooked up this idea, and I was thinking, man, how hard can it be? Well, let me tell you, it was hard. It was a brutal business to start up. But of course, I wanted to stay in Miami. I wanted to work with my brother. Um, it was a tough start. So we came up with the Sandler plan. We started teaching training salespeople. Um, it was it was a badly thought out plan. It was how many plans that are made on a drunken night are ever a good plan? So it was a badly thought out plan. It took about 2 years for us to run out of money. And
okay.
then's when we started selling. I mean, we had to run out of money before we figured out that actually we better start selling. We were actually, I mean, I don't want to turn this into a Dickens tale, but we were evicted. Christmas Eve, we were evicted. And we had little
Wow.
kids. Luckily, the kids were too little and we figured it out. But we ran out of money, like ran out of money hard. And but then you learn to sell, and I learned to sell the way I'd been teaching to sell, which is two different things. You know, teaching it and doing it, two different things.
Mm.
And I actually think on reflection, that's made me a lot more, I can connect with my clients a lot better having had that journey of, when they struggle
Yeah.
to implement some of our techniques and mindsets and behaviors. Hey, I've been through that journey. And
Mm.
so, when we actually started selling the way we've been teaching people how to sell, as you know, Darren, when you get good at selling, it's like a meta skill of life. It's like
Yeah.
the world opens up economically and philosophically and psychologically and socially. It really is a meta. I've discovered that developing excellence in helping someone you don't know make a good decision, which is essentially what selling is.
Yeah.
Selling, helping someone who doesn't know you, doesn't trust you to make a good decision. That art, and it is an art and a science, that is a meta skill of life. And if you
Mm.
master it, you basically can write your own check. And from that day, I have to say, I'm blessed. I've been blessed economically and in all parts of my life. Blessed.
It's amazing, isn't it? But and looking back on that, it's what do you think it was that was it a lesson you felt you needed to learn, or do you reckon subconsciously, I'm not to say you're putting yourself in that position, but what was it that flicked the switch? Because certainly in your role as an investment banker looking at mergers and acquisitions, that in itself is a big sales job because you have to build trust and people have to look at the strategy you're going to involve them in selling or merging organizations. Was there a key lesson that sort of popped out at that you look back and think, you know what, I'm glad in retrospect that I had to go through that because it set me up.
Oh, well, basically, I am glad I had to go through that. It did set me up. But what are the lessons that I think I learned? Some of those early lessons that I learned going through that evolution. I think that the legion. One of them is that when you are when you're in a corporate role, you are paid for being the smartest guy in the room. You're paid more for being smart. And I thought that would translate into, um, small, medium businesses, and it doesn't.
Mm.
It doesn't translate in our world that I work, that I swim in now, and I get a sense you swim in that world a little bit too, Darren. Is you paid for being a good seller,
Mm.
and the two things are very different. Now, it's you paid really good if you're both. If you're both a real good seller and super smart, well then
Yeah.
fantastic. But I made a career out of being real smart, and nobody rewards you in the real world for being real smart. That's
Yeah.
one lesson. I think another lesson is that when I was an investment banker, I was surrounded, my customers, my clients are very, they've got great professional humility around my discipline. Okay. So I had a very specific discipline,
Yeah.
structuring and leading negotiations on deals, valuing companies, building financial models. I could make a big long list. And my customer is very comfortable being a novice in that world. And so that means you've got permission to be, not more than permission, you've got an obligation to be speaking about things that your customer doesn't understand
Yeah.
without any apology or without any hesitation. Now, put it into what you and I do, but you and I are out there, and everybody in the world thinks they're a great seller.
Yes.
Everybody. Every founder you and I meet, every entrepreneur, every CEO, they all think they're great sellers. It's the rest of the world that's got the problem, not them, right? 50 years I've been doing this, Carlos. I know what I'm doing, man. Like, I know how many times you meet somebody that goes, "Oh, Darren, you're a sales trainer. Let me tell you my philosophy of selling." And it's like, oh, another guy wants to tell me their philosophy of selling. I feel like doctors must go to these events, and everyone they meet must go, "Oh, you're a doctor. Can you have a look at this thing here on my chest?"
That's fun.
Like doctors must have that all the time, and we have the same problem because everybody thinks they're a great seller despite all evidence to the contrary. I mean, it's
That's
it's honestly delusion. So you and I meet people, and it isn't, when I was an investment banker, I could say, "Hey, you don't know what this is. I know what this is. Pay me lots of money. I'll explain it to you."
yeah.
In our world, you don't really get rewarded for saying, "Hey, you don't know what selling is. I know what selling is. So pay me and I'll show you," because they think they know what selling is.
Mm.
They think it's everyone else that's wrong. It's the team that's wrong. It's the market that's wrong. It's the pricing that's wrong. It's the leads that are bad. It's marketing's fault.
Yes.
It's like everybody else's fault in the world of selling. And I had to learn how to navigate that. I've discovered a way that actually becomes your friend, but that took some learning to do. Took some learning to position instead of saying to you, Darren, Mr. CEO, "Hey, Darren, you don't know what selling is. I do. Let me release me on your team," which you're never going to do because you think you're great. What I'm going to say is, "Hey, Darren, you're a natural seller. You're a
Mm.
natural talent. You're a unicorn, man." Now, that's why great footballers don't make good coaches because they don't understand people that aren't naturally gifted. It's a non transferable skill that you've got, Darren. I've got transferable skills. They're not even as good as your skills, bud, but they're transferable. And now I can stroke your ego, and at the same time, I can help you open the door for me to get through to your team, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the thing. And
That's
you
all.
mentioned before we press record that's helping founders in particular break away from the founder-led selling where most entrepreneurs, where they've got a great product or a great service, they become the super salesperson, and it gets to a point where they can get their organization to a level of success, but it then plateaus because the success is now entirely reliant on them. And it's difficult for them to bring in people to sell like them because the people are not wedded to, I guess, the cause as much as the founder. And a lot of those skills they can't necessarily transfer them because they just do it unconsciously.
Well, isn't it interesting? I think that there's another interesting because I work with a lot of these teams. Like I'm blessed. I truly am. I've worked over the years with hundreds of these teams, and I mean, even right now, I'm working with dozens and dozens of them. And their initial position, a founder's initial position, is Carlos, come in here and get this team to sell like I sell.
Mm,
And the reality is, it's a fool's errand. It's not the right answer. They're asking the wrong question. Why can't these guys sell like I sell? Is the wrong question.
mm,
The right question is, hey, can you come in here and release all the potential in these guys? That's a different question because a founder sells in an entirely different way.
mm.
They have different conversations. They break all the rules. They have to color within the lines. They're coloring outside the line. They want their reps to color inside the lines, but they're not coloring inside the lines. And all the value that they're driving is outside the lines. They're breaking the rules. They're filled with a passion for the product because they found the business. They really feel the heartbeat of the prospect and the problem that they're solving in a way that a team member is never, never, never going to feel.
Mm.
A great example is, in my experience, a founder doesn't really need good marketing to sell. They don't. They
Yeah.
didn't
Okay.
need leads. They were kicking doors in. They were scorched
Yep.
earth strategy, blowing up phones. They were penetrating their market brute force. And then they look at the team. Why can't my team do that? A team doesn't do that. A team needs leads in a different way to the way a founder needs leads. A team manages and handles leads in a different way to the way a founder manages and handles leads. And the worst thing that often happens, this I see happens a lot. Along the journey, some way, they've actually hired a couple of natural talents themselves, right?
Yep.
In that journey, 90% of what they've hired hasn't worked out because they're hiring people into chaos. But along the way, they met one or two people that they hired in who were maverick natural talents just like them. And all that did was prove to them that there are some sellers out there, the ones they like, that look like they think they should be getting from sell. But you don't want those guys. Those guys are
No.
mavericks, uncontrollable. They drive a lot of revenue, but they're incredibly disruptive. They create chaos around them. You can't build a sales team around these mavericks. And how many
Mm.
times do you see this, Darren? They get that guy, and then they make them a sales leader. They're like, "Oh, you know how to sell. We're gonna make you the chaos guy." That it's like, do you remember like the whirling? What was that? Disney, not Disney, like Warner Brothers character, the Tasmanian devil. There we are from
Tasmanian
your
devil.
part of the
Yeah.
world.
That's
Like
it.
with the spinning round that Tasmanian devil creating some sales. Oh yeah, you're the guy I'm going to get to lead my sales team. That sounds like a good plan. No, it's not. It's like the worst plan since Mr. and Mrs. Hitler said, "Let's have a baby." It's like a terrible, terrible plan. So I come along and try and give them a dose of what it means to create a culture of excellence and mastery and build over time leadership rhythms and selling rhythms that are predictable, boring, but with that creates pipeline disciplines and they can actually at any point in time with good accuracy forecast how well the business is going to do. That's what you and I try and create. And it ain't
And
easy because
it's
they think they want all the whirling dervishes.
well, that's the thing. They look at the world completely differently, and their methodology has actually worked for them at a certain level of their company's development. But when they bring people in who perhaps don't have that background or don't have that approach, it has to be a completely different method so that the business
Yeah.
can be sustainable. Um, I love your thoughts though on as you go through this process and as you sort of are consulting to a founder that's trying to remove themselves from the, I guess, the fire, but also create a system that enables the business to be sustainable. What sort of challenges do you typically face with the founder, where I don't know whether it's a case of they don't want to let go or they try to imprint onto you the thought process, their methodology, their philosophy that then becomes part of what their team does.
So I think a lot of, and wow, even the fact that you asked me the question tells me that you've done this a lot, right? Because I think a lot of it has to be solved at the beginning. Even when you sell the gig, even when you sell the deal. I mean, I solve a lot of this problem when I'm selling the deal originally, right at the beginning. You know, the conversations like, hey, Darren, listen, if you ask me to come in here and what are you going to do when I ask them to follow a process that isn't your process? Like, how are you going to
Yeah.
respond to that? Because it ain't going to be your process.
Mm.
How are you going to respond? And of course, they always say, well, Carlos, you're the expert. If you do it, you do it. And I'm like, no, no, wait a minute, buddy. Everyone says that. Everybody says that. But when the crunch is on and you want them to sell one way and I want them to sell another way, how are you going to respond to that? Is my way going to be a nice to have? Is my way going to be a guideline? Is it going to be a rule? Or is it going to be the law? And think carefully, Darren, before you answer this, because this tells me whether I want this gig or not.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. I have an embarrassment of riches in my pipeline. I only want to work with teams where I'm going to be able to have the 6 months required to really create a team of developing professional sellers.
Mm.
And I make them really do some soul searching. Are you going to be comfortable, Mr. CEO, when after about 9 months, people are going to start outselling you and you're not going to like it? As much as you're telling me today you want to be able to go on vacation and have the teams close the business for you. Yes, of course you do. Economically, of course, that's right. But
Mm.
from an ego point of view, you like being super rep.
Mm.
How are you going to feel when somebody starts to outsell you and it ain't you? And how are you going to feel when they say to you, oh, no, it's this stuff Carlos is teaching? You're not going to feel good about that. Your
Yeah.
bank's going to like it, but I promise you, you're not going to like it. And what are we going to do about that problem? And then I have a bunch of decks that I use, which is basically here's how you've got to get out of selling. So I have to win the assignment, and then I have to re-win it after I've started working with them. I have a bunch of decks that get progressively stronger in their language, basically telling the CEO to back off. Right?
Yeah.
I've got my series of back off, Mr. CEO decks, and they don't start that way. They start very professional and very, very nurturing and very, I'm doing it with a lot of love in my heart. But it does eventually get like to the deck. I've got one slide in the deck, which is just back off, right? It's like eventually I'll get there, but it doesn't start that way. And hey, at the end of the day, it's their business, not my business. So,
Yeah.
I can only do work as well as they'll let me do.
And I'm sure there'd be some organizations where you've got a CEO that, whilst they might talk about the fact that, yeah, I'm more than happy for my team to take the accolades and all that sort of stuff, they still want to be front and center. So for some, I'm sure they don't back off. And you probably make a choice at some stage to say, you know what, this is not going to continue, because if you're not prepared to put your ego at the door and let your team become extraordinary and create a great legacy for your business, then you know what, I'm no longer needed.
Okay, how can I do it? Do you know, it's interesting. So there are a bunch of different things that we bring to market. And at one end of the spectrum, we bring this strong behavior, well, over here, the strong behavioral change, the mindset change, the techniques and the skill set established, creating a culture of excellence, high growth, scaling sales team. That's one end of the spectrum. But we have the other end of the spectrum. We have companies that they're a sales team, they're a corporate. They have somebody somewhere's got a box to tick that says, I got sales training.
Mhm.
And for those, it doesn't come with any behavioral change at all, by the way.
Yeah.
It's just I can run a sales kickoff event with the best of them. I can do an event-based training with the best of them. I will be having a great time. Put me on a stage, give me a mic, we'll have a gay old time. Fabulous. Doesn't change any behaviors. And I can
No.
operate anywhere on that spectrum. Now, for the real behavioral change, I charge a lot of money. But
Yeah.
for those founders who discover that they're just not up for the change, the transformation, that's all right. We'll scale back. We'll have a great time. I'll just train the sales guys, and nothing's really going to change.
Yeah.
But you can feel good because you've got them training. I can feel good because I'm not disappointing anybody, and we're having and they can feel good about themselves doing what they've always done, because that's
Mm.
all sellers really want to hear. Most sellers, there's 10% that they're either in a lot of pain or they're just this intellectually hungry, They've got great intellectual humility. They want the development. So there's 5% that really want the development. There's 5% who are in a lot of pain and they need to meet some bills. So they really want the development. 90% of sellers, given their choice, they say they want change. They say they want better results, but what they really want is better results from old behaviors. That's
Yeah.
what I see a lot. And 90% of the sellers, if you leave it up to them, even the ones saying to you, Darren, hey, Darren, I want more sales. I want more bigger commission checks. I want to hit quota. They forget to add the end of the sentence without doing anything different. That's
Yeah.
unspoken. And
Yeah.
so, and we both know you can't get a different result if you're not prepared to do something different. And
That's it.
that's why we need leadership behind us.
Mm.
That when we bring them something new to act, for it to move out of the training room and onto the street,
Mm.
that is that's a leadership lift to move it out
Totally.
onto the street. Yeah.
Totally. So with that, Carlos, when you're thinking about behaviors and when you think about any behavioral change, you'll go through almost like a cycle of maybe it's a mini hero's journey where you're going to resist it, not want to take it on. It's going to be uncomfortable. And eventually you might have a breakthrough when you see something that, oh, maybe this does have some impetus to create some sustainable change. In the work that you're doing, are there some, I guess, standout behaviors that you tend to come back to that has the biggest impact, particularly with a founder that actually gets it and really wants that sustainable success and are poured into their team? Because as you said before, we can have great sales techniques and you give them a sales methodology and they tick the box and say, yeah, we've done sales training, but then they go back to old habits. So some key, particularly for 2025, 2026, right? Moving forward, some key behaviors that move the needle.
I think I've got a magic list of key behaviors from a selling point of view, and then a magic list of key behaviors from a sales leadership point of view. So,
Mm,
and I think they're two very different things. Which one do you want me to
yeah.
talk about? You choose.
Well, I'm going to start with the sales leadership one because if you don't set the example as a sales leader, it's very hard to then get the behaviors as a seller.
So, I'll give you my sort of top three or four for sales leaders. Number one, always be recruiting.
Yeah.
And in my mind, recruiting for a sales leader is the same as prospecting for a seller. And all the sales leaders want their team to be prospecting more, lead generating more, but they don't want to put and by the way, recruiting is kind of like prospecting. It's thankless. From a sales leadership point of view, it's the sales leader's version of prospecting.
Mm,
It's thankless. It's rich with rejection. It's grinding. It's boring. It's all the things prospecting is for their sellers. Now they want their sellers prospecting, but they don't want to do their version of prospecting, which is
yeah.
recruiting. So just building good rhythms around recruiting, I think, is just vital. Otherwise, if you're not, I mean, it's job number one of a leader, right? Is to identify, recruit, onboard top talent. You've got to do that. If you're not doing that, then the little talent you've got in the team has got the knife to your throat.
Mm,
So it's you've got to be recruiting. I One of the biggest impacts that we see is when we bring people that our sort of daily stand-ups. I'm a big believer, old school, I know, in a daily stand-up. Now, I most of the teams I first meet aren't doing any kind of stand-ups. They're doing no
yeah.
kind of huddle-ups. Um, there's a watered down version, which is a Monday huddle up, right? That's a watered down Monday huddle up, Friday checkout, check in,
Hmm.
check out. But the real master teams are doing every day morning check in, evening check out. So if I was to sort of like on the spectrum, you go from no check-ins, check-outs, which is where 90% of the world's at,
Mm,
to a little bit better than that is Monday check-in, Friday check-out. A little bit better than that is morning check-ins without the checkout. And then the best of the best do morning check-ins, evening checkouts, 20 minutes with the team, huddle up
mm,
with a very standard agenda and just 20 minutes. And what I have noticed is that the earlier that check-in, the more successful the team, which is weird But those teams I work with that are doing that at 7:30 are selling way more than those that do that at 10 a.m. Right? Oh yeah,
Wow.
we'll do our morning huddle up at 10 a.m. I'm like, well, I don't know what time morning starts at your place, but it ain't 10 a.m. So there is a correlation between now, is it correlation or causation? Is it that if you're doing a huddle up like that at 7:30, is that really just one part of a completely different culture than the team that's doing a 10 a.m.? It could be, I'm not quite sure what's the cause there. It could be that the culture's right already, or it could be that earlier stand-ups and check-ins are better. I think it's
Mm,
early is better.
mm. Well, it
Now,
gives
to
you
be
more selling
clear,
time,
I
right?
don't do 7:30 with my team either, and I have a nice
Yeah.
team, but we don't do 7:30. I mean, 7:30. I'm at the gym at 7:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
So
And
there's
pro
check-in, check-out, there's recruitment, and I think the other one that's a big one that stands out is the weekly discipline. Well, two stand out: weekly discipline of pipeline review,
yeah.
one-on-one pipeline review with the team where you really do a pipeline teardown, and just CRM discipline. I
Mm,
mean, you would be astounded. Well, you wouldn't, but your listeners, because I imagine there's a selection bias with your listeners. I imagine you're to be listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast makes me think that that is a slice of the population that's already thinking about some of this stuff. So
yeah.
your listeners will be amazed at how poor generally CRM discipline is. It's just terrible, terrible. Not your listeners, because your listeners are rock stars. They have to be. They're listening to your podcast, but everybody else. So
Well,
there's my top leader behaviors.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. And it's and the reason often the reason the CRM discipline is so poor is because it's such a compliance driven behavior, not an enabler for us to be better and more relevant to our customers as a conversation starter, as a information sharing platform. It's staggering.
And I think also, there's something else I think. If you were to list out the major roles of a sales leader, it's going to have on that list like supervisor, which is
Mm,
the CRM and the wages and rations and things like that. So there's that supervisory role. Then there's training and coaching and mentoring and sales strategy design and all the sexy stuff comes after. But right at the front end is supervisor.
mm,
And nobody really thinks that's got much value. And it probably doesn't. And nobody really wants to do it. Nobody wants to be big brother and accountability and all that, all that stuff. Nobody wants to be that person. And they want to get all involved in the sexy stuff, the strategy and the training and the mentoring and the coaching.
yeah,
And they're right, by the way. They're exactly right. The value is driven in the other things. But what
mm,
my view on this is very clear. You don't get the right to do the sexy stuff if you don't do the supervisory front end. It's like the
totally.
ticket to the party. It's the ante at the table. You don't get the right to see the cards if you don't put the ante in the pot. There's a poker reference for you. So you just don't get to play if you don't do the supervisor. Yeah, of course nobody wants to do it. Yeah, of course there's not a lot of value in it, really. But you just don't get the permission to do the other stuff without that front end. And that's why it's
100%.
kind of it's like the red-headed stepchild of the sales manager's portfolio, right? They just don't want to do it.
No,
Yeah,
no. And if they can get away with not doing it, they will. They'll take the opportunity to do it because they want to
100%.
put the emphasis on the more comfortable, more sexy stuff. So from a selling, if we take the sales leadership, one of the ones you talked there was always recruiting. So the logical one for selling is always be prospecting.
That's got to be number one.
Yeah.
Always be prospecting. Always be prospecting. Always be oriented to your pipeline. Well, what are the big ones for sellers? Always be prospecting. Always be oriented to your pipeline. Always leave a meeting with another meeting booked.
Mm,
Always, and I'm using the word always intentionally. This isn't like I'm not using it as an exaggeration. It's always. Now, sometimes I don't, but I drop the ball. I mean, I'm not saying it's like some kind of Herculean standard we have to set to ourselves and then wear the Hessian underpants if we don't achieve that standard. But we should at least know when we've dropped the ball. And if I leave a meeting, any sales meeting without another meeting booked, I drop the ball.
Yeah.
If a day goes by and I've not made some proactive, provocative moves in the market, I drop the ball.
Mm.
I've got to be provocative in the market. My role as a seller, and I am a seller first. I own a business and I lead a sales team, but I'm a seller first.
Yeah.
I spend 50, 60% of my time selling.
Hmm.
And that's actually one of all my trainers are sellers first. I wouldn't ever put a pure play trainer in front of a sales team. It
Hmm.
just isn't, it's just not authentic.
Yeah.
So I've got when I'm selling, I've got two jobs. I've got to instigate conversations of value, and then I've got to lead conversations of value. Instigate and lead conversations of value. Now that makes it seem very easy, but it's not. That's a lion's job. But it needs that. That is what our role is. So I've got to always be prospecting, always be oriented to my pipeline. I've got to have instigating and leading conversations of value every day.
Yeah.
Never leave a meeting without the next meeting booked. Always answer a question with a question. It's never about the price. I mean, I could, like Steve Rogers, Captain America, I could do this all day. It's like, it's never about the price. Never. That's the one that everyone hates. My clients hate that. It's never. Never, 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 ever, never once, ever in the 15 years I've been doing this have I ever met, and I've trained thousands of people, like hundreds of clients. I have never yet found a situation that was ever really about the price. It's often about the fit. It's not about, I'm not blind to the economics. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
just never about the price, ever. And sellers are out there discounting, and they're full of money issues. They're full of, me too, by the way. But it's never really about the price.
Yeah.
It's never about the information I give, only the information I can get. It's an information getting exercise, not an information giving exercise. I should have, there's the difference between a deal that's in control and a deal that's out of control. And there's a difference between a conversation that's in control and out of control. And it is my responsibility as a seller to be in deals where I'm in control and conversations where I'm in control. And there are very clear flags when you are in control and when you're not in control. And
Yeah.
how to get back into control is
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. And I
So
think
there's a few things for you.
no, I love that. And I think the information getting element means that, and I'm staggered by the number of organizations that focus their training on the company's products and the company's services. So almost indoctrinated to proactively go and lead with that in the marketplace versus, hang on, put that to the side, go and ask some really great questions, go and interrogate the market, go and qualify the market, and go and ask great questions because your job is to get information, is not to give information. You only give that once you've got enough information. There's the match or a fit.
Yeah, it's I always tell my clients the star of the show is not you. And
Mm,
the star of the show is not your product or your service. The star
mm.
is the prospect and their problem that you're solving.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
it's
it.
all about. The
Totally.
whole conversation should be about them and their problem. And whenever you find yourself talking about your solution, you're probably losing control of that conversation.
Totally.
Um,
Love
and
that.
and I know that you do it too. I know your clients will tell you too, but the clients will say, "Yeah, but Carlos, at some point, you've actually got to tell them about your product." And you know what? Often you don't. Often you can. I have sold loads of things without somebody really knowing what they were buying, but they knew
Yeah.
what it was pointed at. They knew the problem they were solving without really quite knowing how it solved it.
Mm.
And that's called conviction, baby. I mean, you've also got to come to the world with some conviction. You've got to come to the world with consistency and with conviction, and with an intent to help.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I think this a caricature that the world has about that manipulative seller. It's like a child of the 50s. That I mean, that seller doesn't survive anymore. You've got to come to the world with an intent to serve, with an
Yes.
intent to solve problems. with an intent to help somebody make a great decision that a decision they wouldn't make without your help.
Mm,
Because otherwise it's just order taking. And by the way, I have no problem with order taking. I'll take an order all day. I mean, I've got bills to pay, and the shop doesn't mind where the money came from.
that's right.
But let's not fool ourselves and think that we sold something when we took an order, because
Mm,
then that'll give us a false sense of confidence, right?
it
There's
will.
taking
It will.
orders and there's selling,
Totally. And we know
selling
that
without
with
manipulation.
well, and that's the thing you see in the different cycles of the economy that the sellers rise to the top when the economic conditions maybe are not at their most optimum, and that's where you see the real true people who sell to serve or serve to serve to solve problems are the ones that rise to the top. I know we're short on time, but there's just one other question I wanted to add on top of that. In that is the continual proliferation of AI, which is going to continue to, I guess, permeate every area of our life. How are you seeing AI play a part in the work that you're doing? Is it speeding up the I guess the sales cycles, the education cycles, or is there something else you're seeing?
I think used well, it speeds up the development cycles. Like we've got cool things that we bring. We bring AI role play bots and we bring conversational intelligence tools. So like we bring some AI solutions. So I can absolutely see the value in terms of the development cycle of the team. I haven't yet seen anybody truly deploy anything that's replaced a human yet,
Yeah.
that it's replaced some humans, but it hasn't replaced the activity, the human activity,
Mm.
yet being the important word.
Yeah.
I don't really see a world in our lifetime where the AI is going to replace the human in selling. But I think people that use AI will replace people that can't use AI. I think that's
Yeah.
an important
Yeah.
differential.
I love it.
I think I think AI has the capacity to speed up some things right now, but it's like a little hobby at the moment at the edges. I think it will become pervasive over the next 12 to 24 months, the
Mm.
way in which we will, build AI into most of our human delivery. But at the moment, I'm seeing lots of sales, and I know me personally, I use AI extremely well. I mean, it has made me tons more efficient. I
Mm.
can get through way, way, way more with the support of AI. It can't replace me, and I
Yeah.
can't see it replacing selling, not prospecting either, yet. Yet.
Yes.
I think the world will always need a human to sell. Well, not always in our lifetime, I don't think it's going to replace the action of really understanding a buyer, sorry, their
Mm.
problem and connecting with them on a human level. I think there are certain transactions that AI are now handling, but I don't usually get involved in those anyway. We do consultative selling, premium selling. AI isn't there yet. I'm sure
No.
it's there with transactional stuff, non-relationship,
Yeah.
non-consultative. I'm sure it's there for those, but it's not for me yet.
Not in
It's
that
not
realm.
where we
Yeah.
are yet. Yeah.
No. But it's about using it to your advantage and helping you become more effective so that you can spend more time in the qualitative areas of building those relationships, understanding more deeper the problems, and then formulating those solutions to solve the problems. That can
Yeah,
speed that up for sure.
I think it's relevant to reflect that, when you and I were a lad, Darren, the average product cycle for most major companies was around 6 years.
Mm.
A car would relaunch a model every 6 years. Things would cycle around 6 years.
Yeah.
It's about 3 months for the major large language models right now,
Yeah.
which essentially means that in like AI years, like they have dog years, AI years
Mm.
are about 5 days long at the moment.
Mm.
That's legit. That's like legit math. It's about 5 days is an AI year. So when I speak to a CEO who's saying, "Yeah, Carlos, we're going to look at AI in about 6 months," you have to remember that means if you're going to wait 6 months from today, you're going to be 18 years behind somebody who says, "Today, I'm going to look at AI and get serious about it."
Yeah.
18 years of data, 18 years of new behaviors, new processes that fit around it, all the growth that happens. You're 18 years behind by waiting 6 months.
Mm. So the message there is do not wait, jump in. Even when you don't
Don't
necessarily
wait, jump
understand it,
in.
just jump in. Just jump in.
Yeah,
Carlos, it's been
yeah.
a phenomenal conversation. Thank you. Lots of
Thank
lots
you.
of great value there. Really appreciate it. For people wanting to connect with you and learn more about you and what you do, where's the best place for them to do that?
I write every day on LinkedIn, even though my head of marketing is telling me that I'm flooding with too many messages. But I like writing on LinkedIn, and I do write it. So I write every day on LinkedIn. There aren't many Carlos Garridos from England living in Miami, so check me out. Have a look on LinkedIn. I'll also send you my link tree, Darren. You can put it in the show notes with
Okay.
the variety. If you comfortable with
Yeah,
that, or just put
absolutely.
my
Yep.
my LinkedIn profile in there.
Yep.
And yeah, would love to speak to anybody. And it's been an absolute treat and a pleasure, Darren. Thank you.
Mate, can I thank you also, given that it's a Sunday evening, and I wish you well, and go and spend some good quality time now with your family. But greatly appreciate you being on the podcast, and thank you for adding
Thank
so
you.
much value.
Thank you, buddy. Hey, it was interesting when I said to my wife, I'm just going to go and do this podcast. Her mother looked at her and said something in Spanish that was non-complimentary. I know that. I don't know what it was, but it was something non-complimentary, she said, about me working on a Sunday. Thank you, Darren. What a privilege. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.